Amid the rift between the Supreme Court judges and Chief Justice of India, the 5-judge Constitution bench will today hear the crucial cases including Aadhaar and also decide on the validity of Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which criminalizes homosexuality. The bench will also take other cases which include entry of women into Kerala's Sabrimala temple and validity of adultery law. On Tuesday, the Chief Justice of India, Deepak Mishra, constituted the 5-judge bench to hear important cases, but excluded the 4 senior judges who rebelled against him. In an unprecedented development, the 4 judges, Justice J. Chilameshwar, Ranjan Gogoi, M.B. Lokur and Kurian Joseph, conducted a press conference last Friday and accused the Chief Justice of assigning crucial cases to selective benches, triggering a crisis in the judiciary. Joining me on the broadcast is Jessica Taneja from New Delhi. Jessica, after the recent episode in the Supreme Court where 4 judges almost revolted against the Chief Justice of India, now these important cases lined up, can we expect fireworks in the courtroom?
Well, Raghvendra, of course, we're expecting, a lot to go inside the Supreme Court. But important to highlight here that the Aadhaar bench has now begun hearing the crucial matter which questions the validity of Aadhaar. And we have with us Mr. Sajjan Puvaya, who's the lawyer for one of the petitioners here, challenging the constitutional validity of Aadhaar. So what are your expectations from the case since the constitutional bench has now begun hearing the matter?
I think it's a fantastic moment that the Constitution Bench of the Supreme Court has finally begun hearing this matter. We shouldn't forget that the battle for rights of a citizen and battle against Aadhaar as a scheme which really erodes the fundamental rights of citizens began as early as 2012. Whole host of petitions and interventions were filed opposing the scheme. And we are in 2018, and therefore it's taken a lot of effort for all of us to reach here where the Constitution Bench is now considering. We also have another feather in our hat, that is that a 9-judge bench has pronounced that privacy is an ingrained fundamental right, and therefore the Aadhaar architecture will now be tested from the touchstone of privacy being a fundamental right. And let me be clear, our challenge to Aadhaar is not just on fundamental rights. It's also on the constitutional philosophy of citizens having rights, state having limitations, and can the state actually turn out and have a scenario where it profiles or controls the biometric and iris data or democratic data of citizens. And really that we the people of India gave ourselves a constitution, therefore it's the people's constitution. It is not the state's constitution which actually empowers the state. I think, of course, on the legal side, we have, both sides which will be presenting their case. In my view, it will be very detailed arguments. It should run for a few weeks. But the fact that it has commenced finally is, I think, a fantastic moment for us.
It has commenced finally, Mr. Puvaya. But the question here is, for all that we saw last Friday, the 4 judges came out and held a press conference and was a historic moment. It all comes in the background of issues not resolved yet, and the Constitution Bench does not include the 4 senior judges. How does that impact your case, or it's irrelevant? It's an irrelevant issue to the Aadhaar Constitution Bench right now?
I think we should be very clear that there are 2 different issues. The fact that 4 senior judges of the Supreme Court raised a bunch of issues cannot be ignored. They have to be dealt with, and it is now for the people of India to deal with it. It is for all of us. It impacts integrity of an institution called the Supreme Court, impacts every citizen in this country. It impacts all of us Indians. But please don't club that with what is happening with Aadhaar. The Aadhaar matter is being heard by a Constitution Bench of 5 judges. There is
but the same 5 judges.
Absolutely does not matter. We should get on to a scenario of saying who the judges are, who the judges are not. The fact is that the Supreme Court, a Constitution Bench of the Supreme Court, is considering the matter, and that's all it is. And all of us as petitioners and of course as respondents will be more than happy to argue our case and then receive judgment of the Supreme Court. I again repeat, as a senior advocate for one of the parties, for a couple of interveners in the matter, that I don't think you should club what has happened last week to what is happening with Aadhaar. This is another matter. A Constitution Bench is hearing the matter. We believe that we have a fantastic case to make out in terms of the Aadhaar architecture eroding the constitutional ethos of this country, and we will make that.
Last question. Are you hopeful that Aadhaar would be quashed in totality? Because since Mr. Shyam Devan, who's a senior lawyer, arguing for the petitioners. He says that it's purely voluntary. It is not mandatory. The basis, the genesis of Aadhaar is purely voluntary. Do you think you have a case here?
You know, I should tell you that when we enter battle, both sides actually enters a legal battle to win. But that said, the victory or defeat is not for Aadhaar or against Aadhaar. The fight is for actually being Constitution being victorious. So I believe that if we actually, and we have a case and we will make that case, the ultimate victor will be the Constitution, constitutional ethos, a democratic society within the constitutional framework. So don't look at it as one scheme versus another scheme on whether you will win, not win. Of course, all of us have got into this battle not for nothing. We have actually fought this for many, many years to reach this stage, not for nothing. And I believe ultimately we will be in a position to convince the Honorable Supreme Court that we have a constitutional case to make. And of course,
allow me to come in, Jessica.
May the best
this is
Thank
an
you,
important
Mr.
case.
For speaking to WION. There you go, Raghavendra.
Well, yes, that's a very important case, Jessica, the Aadhaar case.
Which challenges the constitutional validity of Aadhaar. And of course, there are more constitution benches to go. And as you heard him, he said that the judges, the dissenting judges or the rebel judges, as people have been addressing them wrongly, whatever is going on internally within the Supreme Court will not really affect the cases or the constitutional benches which are due to hear some more important matters apart from Aadhaar. But today, Aadhaar has begun.